Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the press conference of the National Electoral Commission. I would like to welcome the members of the National Commission, as well as Mr. Maciej Zettler, the contractor of the IT system. I would like now to give the floor to the chairman, Stefan Jaworski. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to inform you about the communiqué of the National Electoral Commission about partial unofficial results of the voting as of 9 a.m. Based on the electronic information about the results of voting from 81,901 protocols, out of the total number of 123,300 protocols, the results are as follows. First of all, the partial and official results of elections for the mayors of the cities and presidents of the cities, as well as borough leaders. The turnout was 47.67% out of the total number of more than 2,000 of mayors of the cities, presidents of the cities, and borough leaders. The results have arrived from 238 cities, towns, and municipalities. The turnout was 47.86% of the votes out of the total number of 2,407,000 in 133 councils. The results have been established. As far as the councils are concerned, to municipalities and voivodeship assemblies, the results have not yet been established. As regards provincial assemblies, the situation looks as follows. As regards the election committee of the Polish Peasant Party, the largest number of votes was cast in the Warmińsko-Mazurskie Voivodeship, 40.33%, and Podlaskie 40.20%, and Lubelskie 37.66% of the votes. The election committee, Direct Democracy, regained most votes in the Łódzkie Voivodeship, where it gathered 1.29% of the votes. The election committee, Law and Justice, gained most votes in the Podkarpackie Voivodeship, 45.57% of the votes, then in the Małopolskie Voivodeship 41.60%, and in the Lubelskie Voivodeship 32.59%. Election Committee of the Civic Platform gained most votes in the Pomorskie Voivodeship, 37.19%, followed by the Dolnośląskie Voivodeship, 33.11%, and in Zachodniopomorskie 32.86%. The election committee of the electors Ruch Narodowy, National Movement, gained most votes in the Podkarpackie Voivodeship, 2.43%. The Democratic Left Alliance gained most votes in the Lubuskie Voivodeship, 14.76%, followed by the Zachodniopomorskie Voivodeship, 12.10%, and in Wielkopolskie Voivodeship, 10.36% of the vote. And the election committee of the National Movement, Nowa Prawica of Janusz Korwin-Mikke, gained most votes in the Pomorskie Voivodeship, 4.10%, followed by Małopolskie Voivodeship with 4.05%, and in Dolnośląskie Voivodeship 3.97%. As regards presidents of the cities, we have got 100% of the protocols introduced in Białystok, and the situation looks as follows. The winner is Tadeusz Turskolaski with 49.37% of the vote, followed by Dobrzyński Jan with 34.16% of the votes. In the city of Bydgoszcz, out of 96.59% of the reports introduced into the system, Ruski Rafał Piotr has won with 37.06% of the votes. followed by Dąbrowicz Konstanty, who has got 19.88% of the votes, and followed by Gralik Marek Henryk with 19.61% of the votes. In the city of Gdańsk, 91.48% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. Adamowicz Paweł Bogdan reached 45.84% of the vote, and second comes Jaworski Andrzej with 26.37%. In Gorzów Wielkopolski, 98.53% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. The decisive winner is Wójcicki Jacek Piotr with 60.64% of the votes. Second comes Jędrzejczak Tadeusz with 17.29% of the votes. In Kraków, 54.83% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. Majchrowski Jacek is the leader with 39.37% of the votes, followed by Lasota Marek Wojciech with 26.76%, and third comes Gibała Łukasz with 11.22%. In Katowice, 94.61% of the reports have been introduced into the system. The leader is Krupa Marcin Tomasz with 42.87%. Second comes Sośnierz Andrzej Stanisław with 22.25%, and then Godlewski Arkadiusz Mariusz with 15.69% of the votes. In Kielce, out of 95.70% of the protocols introduced into the system, the winner is Lubawski Wojciech Jerzy with 55.68% of the votes, followed by Adamczyk Krzysztof with 20.94% of the votes. In Lublin, 100% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. The winner is Żuk Krzysztof Jan, who has gathered 60.13% of the votes. Second comes Muszyński Grzegorz with 30.56% of the votes. In the city of Łódź, only 2.63% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. The leader is Zdanowska Hanna Elżbieta with 56.14% of the votes, followed by Gościńska Jolanta Maria with 21.38% and Trela Tomasz Dominik with 8.63% of the votes. In Olsztyn, out of 93% of the protocols introduced into the system, the leader is Małkowski Czesław Jerzy with 39.69% of the votes, followed by Grzymowicz Piotr Władysław with 25.47% and Arendt Iwona Ewa with 11.17%. The city of Opole, 100% of the protocols have been introduced. Wiśniewski Arkadiusz has achieved 47.51%, Ociepa Marcin Michał 21.13%, and Jarmuziewicz Tadeusz 19.71%. In Poznań, 77.08% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. The leader is Grobelny with 28.46%, followed by Jaśkowiak Jacek, 21.50%, and Dziuba Tadeusz with 19.69%. Rzeszów, 98.92% of the protocols have been introduced. Now the winner is Ferenc Tadeusz with 66.31% of the votes, followed by Szlachta Andrzej, 22.44%. In Szczecin, 99.50% of the protocols have been introduced. Krzystek Piotr Tomasz heads the list with 46.19%, followed by Jacena Wit Małgorzata, 17.75%, and Szałabawka Artur Lesław with 13.14%. In Toruń, 91.67% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. The winner is Zaleski Michał Franciszek with the lead of 70.25% of the votes. Number 2 Szeuring Wielgus Joanna Izabela with 17.34%. In Wrocław, 33.11% of the protocols have been introduced. The leader is Dudkiewicz Rafał Franciszek with 40.82% of the votes, followed by Stachowiak Różecka Mirosława Agnieszka with 27.45%. Third comes Wiktorska Święcicka Aldona Izabela with 10.90%. And Warsaw, 30.14% of the protocols have been introduced into the system. The leader is Gronkiewicz Hanna Beata with 45.37% of the votes, followed by Sasin Jacek Robert with 29.09% and Guzioł Piotr Andrzej with 8.57% of the votes. These are partial unofficial results. As I have informed you, ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving over to the Q&A session. Please use the microphone when asking your questions. Let us start on this side. Mariusz Wiśniewski, Polskie Radio Informacyjne, Agencja Radiowa. We have some information from the regions, from individual cities, that the works have been stopped in individual commissions, for example, in Białystok, in Łomża, in Sieradz. One even talks about stopping the works of those commissions until the afternoon. I do confirm that information. There are some problems we are facing, and now I will give over to Mr. President of the company, of the IT company, to elaborate. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, there are some problems connected with printouts of the protocols, of the collective protocols. So far, more than 136,000 protocols have been gathered, out of which about 88,000 have been approved, and the number of the approved protocols is growing at the rate of about 1,000 protocols per 20 minutes. The only problems that we are facing right now are problems with the printouts, namely the protocols are flowing in, the protocols are being verified and approved. However, all those protocols have to be analyzed, have to be counted, and on the basis of them, documents in XML format are being developed. There are no problems here whatsoever as far as the system is concerned. And on the basis of these documents, one can understand who is winning, what is the support for individual candidates and for individual committees. But there are problems between processing the XML and creating printouts. Right now we are making all efforts to remove that error. We assess that error will be removed within the next couple of hours. So I understand that this is the third technical error that has occurred during the counting process, because at 6 a.m. we were informed that everything was all right. This is a failure which has been going on for some time now. At 6 a.m. there was also a problem with the printouts, and this problem has not been solved yet. What will be the impact of this failure on the counting of the results? It does not impact the counting. What about the time of counting? It does not have an impact on the counting time. The thing is only that the members of the electoral commissions in the regions cannot see the results of the calculations, because the calculations are going on. The protocols are being approved of all the time. That number is growing, and the partial results are derived on the basis of that data. But we have a problem to produce it in a form that would be readable to ordinary people. As regards the breaks until 2:30, until 3 p.m. in individual commissions, can it take so long? We will try to shorten that period considerably. However, we have developed a slightly larger time buffer, so that we do not want to make promises which we cannot keep. So all the time we are trying to arrive at the original reason of the technical error and to solve it as soon as possible. Let me stress again, the results are being calculated all the time, the protocols are being approved of and verified. The only thing is to see the protocol as such. More questions? Please use the microphone. Good morning, Katarzyna Kłoska, TVP Info. I would like to ask the members of the Commission, what are you going to do about it, about the problems? Will you have any audit by the Supreme Chamber of Control or the control by the Internal Security Agency, which I had already conducted such an audit here before the elections. Madam, as regards the audit of the Supreme Chamber of Control, the National Electoral Office, which has the budget at its disposal allocated for the elections, and the budget for the daily activities of the National Electoral Commission, undergoes an annual audit by the Supreme Chamber of Control. Such a control is conducted at the end of each calendar year. It starts from the 1st of January and lasts more or less until the 30th of March of every year. So the audits are there, and the Supreme Chamber of Control is knowledgeable about the situation. As regards the Internal Security Agency, of course, the agency has got certain cyberspace at its disposal, and it can carry out controls if such a need arises. We can also see the necessity to have controls in this respect by that body of the state which is responsible for the security of the state. But it does not have any impact on the functioning of our system. The problem is to make sure that competent state authorities at a right point in time use appropriate measures and introduce such legal regulations which make it possible for us to entrust certain services and purchase of the equipment on the basis which are prescribed for such projects. In other words, that we are not at the mercy of the so-called public procurement. Now, let me ask you, Mr. Chairman, whether the Internal Security Agency conducted such an audit before the election started, before the voting started. Let me stress, such control did not take place. There was a certain intervention which was carried out by that body, which, after clarifying the problems which it noticed, which it raised, decided that the case was fixed. So we cannot speak about a control or an audit, but we can talk more about a signal. The body signaled to us that there might be some failures. However, let me stress once again that this problem, which was mentioned back then, didn't have any significance for the functioning of the electronic system. A question to Mr. Maciej Zettler, the contractor of the IT system. Did you expect that such problems could occur before the start of the elections? Let me say the following. It is very hard to predict the functioning of such complex IT systems. We did not expect to see such problems occurring, which concern things with the printouts. We could have expected some efficiency problems, the inflow of protocols, but we did not expect any problems with printouts. Now I would like to give the floor to the middle of the room and the right-hand side. Radio Z, I would like to ask you whether, expecting those problems, wasn't it possible for you to hire more people to solve such problems in a more efficient way? Madam, as I mentioned, we did not expect any problems whatsoever with the printouts. This is a situation which occurred in the program within the last couple of days, between the second test that we carried out and the launching of the system. We were not able to predict that before, and this is not about the number of programmers or persons working on this particular model. Agnieszka Zakrzewski, Radio Tok FM. I have a question about the results in the provincial assemblies. As Mr. Chairman quoted, we had information about the number of protocols which have been approved when electing the mayors of the cities and presidents of the cities. Do you have the same information about the elections to individual provincial assemblies? Switch on your microphone, please. As I have already said, it concerns the results which have been approved from 81,000 constituencies, 81,901 to be precise. Is it evenly distributed in individual voivodeships as regards the number of approved protocol, or is it just like in the case of the cities that in one city we have got about 100%? Of course, it's the same way. Thank you very much. Another question, TVP Info, TVN24. Okay, the first in the row. Yes, please, go ahead. Radio RMF. Could you tell us in what number of commissions the works have been interrupted and what is the reason for that? Sir, we keep stressing that the works in the constituency commissions have not been interrupted. Those commissions which are counting the votes, which have not yet finished to count the votes and draft the document, are still continuing their tasks. The problem concerns the territorial commissions, that is the municipality, county and voivodeship commissions. And only some of them have faced certain problems, as described by Mr. President. Only they have suspended their works for a couple of hours, not to spend time in an idle way, so to speak. Another question, please. How many such commissions are there? We do not have such data because individual commissions take their independent decisions about continuing their work, if they have got enough data, or to stop their work, because there can be different kind of problems which have to be clarified when documents have to be approved and so on and so forth. So each individual commission takes a decision whether to continue its work or not. I suppose that the problems concern the commissions at the higher level, some commissions at the higher level. Łukasz Jedliński, TVN24, Mr. Chairman, I've got a question. I know that the IT system failed at the point of printing out, but can this problem be overcome? There are people working in each of those commissions, with all due respect, but now we can say that due to the problem with printouts, the Polish people will hear the results much later. Question number 2. Could you explain, Mr. Chairman, why a couple of hours after the voting in Warsaw, for instance, at 3 a.m., we found out that only less than 1% of the votes has been counted? Why is it the case? And another question connected with it, is there any sense behind quoting partial results having less than 1% of the votes? Let me start with the middle question that you asked. As you know perfectly well, the number of inhabitants, of voters who are registered in a particular area of voting differs. There are constituencies, like those in hospitals or in prisons, where there are only several voters. There are villages and small towns with several dozen voters, and in Warsaw, where constituencies consist of several thousand voters. So it's easier to count voices and to draft documents in the tiny or small constituencies where people vote, whereas in the large constituencies, one has to select the ballot papers, they have to be counted, and documents have to be drafted. And this is time-consuming. That is why it lasts long. Are there any more questions? Yes, one more question. Telewizja Republika, TV Republika. The break in certain communities or towns, as I understand, results only from the problems with the printouts and not from the overloading of the servers. Is that correct? It is not connected with overloading of the servers. The servers right now are doing a good job. You can go through the system, so there are no problems connected with efficiency. The problems did occur when there was a peak of protocols flowing in that happened at about 11 p.m. and lasted for about 10 minutes. So it has absolutely no impact on the efficiency. Another thing is that until now, more than 88,000 protocols have been approved. There are about 32,000 still remaining to be approved. So we are at the end of the counting process right now. So I understand there is no alternative. Everything is up to the IT experts right now. Well, there is an alternative way. We could switch into the so-called manual counting, which means that having the results of the voting in individual constituencies, we could draft manually reports at the level of municipality, county and voivodeship. No problem. This will be time-consuming, but we can go about it. So if you can do it manually, well, if it was possible, if it was feasible to restart the system and to use it and to do what should be done, then it would facilitate our work. Are there any more questions? Go ahead, please. President Zettler perhaps can elaborate on the problem. As regards what Mr. Chairman has said, the results are presented in two formats. One format is a purely textual in digital format, which includes detailed information about the number of votes, about the number of votes for individual candidates or lists. And these data are available all the time. The system presents that to the commissions. It can be viewed, it can be monitored. The problem is between switching from the strictly digital format, which, well, could be understandable even to the statutory version. Thank you. One more question on the right-hand side of the room. Go ahead, please. I would like to ask, when do you expect to have the data available on the internet website? So we cannot make any declarations whatsoever. In order to see the results of voting to the local government, we have got 2 or 3 days. This has been the practice so far. The system that we have used so far was efficient at counting. I'm talking here about the 2014 elections, and everything seemed to be going well. But there was this pause, this suspension, and I hope that this technical error will be removed, and I hope that we will be able to do our job. One more question. Can you confirm the information that some schools had to cancel some of their lessons because there were still members of the commissions present in the classrooms? Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot confirm this information. We are not able to confirm it. We are not able to deny it because we do not have such information. But it is quite obvious. And when I talked about the complicated counting system, I mentioned that if the majority of constituency commissions are based at educational centers, especially at schools, if the commission counts votes overnight, of course, some problems can happen with opening a given school, a given center, at 8 o'clock in the morning to organize classes for its students. However, the legislator has taken that into account, given the fact that the elections are organized at those centers. Let me ask you, it is not quite clear. What is the exact nature of the technical error? The thing is that the protocol is not generated in the appropriate form. It is not possible to send the protocol to you, so I can say that I cannot understand. I have not grasped the nature of the problem. If I'm correct, I'm not an expert myself, the problem is the following. Each appropriate territorial commission at the level of the municipality, of the county, of the voivodeship has to print out its own protocol based on the results from a given territory. This is the core of the problem. And then those results have to be passed on to the appropriate voivodeship commissioner, who is going to compile the results of the voting in his voivodeship, and then each electoral or election commissioner will submit protocols of such results to us, and on the basis of such results we will provide comprehensive results of the voting in Poland on the national level. This is the procedure as stipulated by the law. Are there any more questions, maybe additional comments? Please go ahead. We are at your disposal, and we will be happy to explain things which we are able to explain. Let me ask an additional question, because there has been this controversial issue. What have been the circumstances of the extraordinary way of selection of the contractor, this accelerated model of selection? Why was this particular company selected, and why didn't it happen according to the public procurement system or to the tender system? I will give over to Minister Czaplicki now, who, as I have said before, has the budget at his disposal, and he allocates the budget. That company was elected in the form of a tender, but it was the only company which reported for the tender, because the offers of Nadina company fulfilled the terms of reference. It was selected by us. This is the procedure in place when carrying out public procurements. Mr. Chairman said that it would be good to have the equipment and resources. It would be good if we could print out the cards outside of the Act on Public Procurement. So either having appropriate resources and people, we can produce IT systems ourselves, or we can take over those systems, which then become our ownership. I'm talking here about the copyrights. And if we have to go for the tender, well, this is the truth. We are at the mercy of those who report for the tender. And in this situation, only the Nadina company reported. We have to add that the tender procedure takes some time. There are certain elements included. One can appeal against the decision, one can take it to court, and so on and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any other last questions that you would like to ask? If not, thank you very much. Thank you to the members of the National Electoral Commission. We will meet soon, and in the so-called meantime, if you have any queries, please feel free to approach us. Thank you very much.